Al Jazeera Podcasts.
This week, we're bringing you The Take's Year in Review, 10 stories that shaped 2025. Today's episode, what Charlie Kirk's death says about political division in the United States. This episode first aired on September 12th, 2025. All dates and references are from that time.
Today, in the U.S., the killing of a controversial political influencer.
U.S. right-wing activist and commentator Charlie Kirk has died after being shot in the neck at an event at Utah Valley University.
Could the assassination of a right-wing activist and a close ally of President Trump push U.S. political violence into a new phase? I'm Malika Bilal, and this is The Take.
My name is Matthew Boedy, and I'm a professor at the University of North Georgia, and I study religious rhetoric, and I've been writing about Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA for several years now.
Well, Professor Matthew, welcome to The Take. It's good to have you here, though, of course, the circumstances are not good. We are speaking on Thursday morning, a day after the shooting death of right-wing political activist Charlie Kirk.
This morning, the hunt is underway for Charlie Kirk's killer. The charismatic conservative activist shot at Utah Valley University. Kirk was discussing mass shootings in America when a shot rang out.
You have written a book on him. So where were you when you heard the news, and what were your first thoughts?
You know, my wife called me about him getting shot when I was in my office meeting with students, and then on the way home, I got the notification of his death. So I was in the car, and I got choked up. I cried.
If you feel comfortable elaborating, what was going through your mind? What was behind that choking up moment?
I cried for his family, for his widowed wife and two children. I have two small children around the same age. And being an advocate against gun violence, I know the lifelong impact that can have. But I also knew that I was choked up crying for our nation. To have this type of assassination in our country just is a flashing red light to our democracy. To shoot a private citizen who merely is trying to influence our democracy is a line we crossed yesterday, and I don't know how we come back from that.
So this is a story that will likely have many updates as the days and the weeks continue, but a lot of people in our audience, especially internationally, might be wondering who Charlie Kirk was.
That's a lot of people, Utah.
Charlie Kirk drew an enthusiastic crowd, as he typically did, for a debate at Utah Valley University.
Bring the best libs that Utah has to offer.
Tell us what we need to know about him in a few words.
So, I mean, he was a political commentator. He appeared on Fox News and the other conservative networks. He had a 3-hour radio program on one of the largest radio networks in America. But his claim to fame, of course, is starting Turning Point USA. And most people in America see that as a college conservative student organization, but it has grown in the last few years well beyond that. They have more high school chapters now than they have college chapters. But he has also put millions of dollars, and the Turning Point budget is upwards of $100 million, into 7 different cultural arenas, avenues in which he has made Turning Point into the indispensable organization for conservative causes. And this is an international story. There's a Turning Point UK, there's a Turning Point Australia, and Charlie Kirk was in South Korea and Japan last week, exporting Turning Point ideals to those two countries.
Can you explain why he was considered so controversial?
Charlie Kirk was controversial because he often promoted far-right views about immigration, which obviously has an international link. Different racial groups, talked about gender. He talked about a lot of issues that would be on the far right.
We are talking about someone who went from suburban Chicago teenager to someone who, at this point, had millions of followers online and is getting an Oval Office eulogy. So U.S. President Donald Trump described Charlie as a patriot and a martyr for truth and freedom.
Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America.
The president also ordered flags at half-staff for him. So you mentioned he's influential, and that is now being exported abroad. How did he become so influential?
You know, I think that one of the things that got him to where he was his charisma. I mean, these campus events were his bread and butter, and he would engage with people of all liberal, progressive politics and bring them up to the microphone. But I think early on in Turning Point, he saw this kind of man against the world mantra that he was going to college campuses where he saw that were there in liberal indoctrination camps, and he was going to make conservative students speak out more. And he was very successful at that, and donors wanted to donate to that. But really what made him was, or gave Turning Point the edge, was he became very friendly and a very tight relationship with Donald Trump Jr. in 2016 as his father ran for president. And so since then, President Trump has appeared at Turning Point events over the years. And then he has his own platforms that he uses every single day. He drives conversations, as you mentioned, has a large social media following. I think what Charlie Kirk was good at was public engagement, speaking to people in ways they understood. He translated political topics into millennial speak, if you want to say that. And I think that he did that all without a college degree.
He was also often quoted as saying that the idea behind Turning Point USA was to save Western civilization. What does that mean?
That's a tough question. Because it's so broad. I mean, Western civilization to him includes democracy, includes that we're a republic, it includes free speech, but it does have a racial element to it. He suggested there is a war on white people happening in America.
The spiritual battle is coming to the West, and the enemies are wokeism or Marxism combining with Islamism to go after what we call the American way of life.
I think Western civilization to him is about liberty and freedom. But it is about a particular culture, a particular Christian culture that he wanted to see America embrace, that he thought America embraced in its origins, that he suggested wrongly that America started as a Christian nation. And I think that Western civilization was a stand-in for that. He wants it to return to that. So I guess if you want to say that his call to Western civilization is kind of like MAGA and making America great again.
Well, Professor Kirk, as you mentioned, was known for traveling the country, hosting debates, giving these Q&As at college campuses. And this latest one was at Utah Valley University.
Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?
Counting or not counting gang violence?
Great.
And he was shot while answering a question about mass shootings. He was known to be an outspoken supporter of gun rights, and video of this moment has been circulating online with people making that remark or pointing that out. It's reverberated around the world. You've attended some of his events, so you know what they're typically like. What reactions to this event have you seen that have stood out to you, good or bad?
I mean, these events are very intimate. It's him sitting in a chair underneath the tent. There are some barriers, but it's people 10 feet away yelling and screaming perhaps at him or debating him in a way. There's just a massive amount of people. And it is joyous at times. He starts by throwing out red MAGA hats. And most of the people, I would say, they are there to see him because they want to be a part of his movement. You know, it's kind of hard to say that he was shot because of what he said at that moment. It seems that we don't know who did this, but it seems it was a sniper from 200 yards away. So I don't know if he was but yes, he has talked about shootings. He has talked about the different mental illnesses that he thinks people commit or have when they commit shootings. He's an advocate of the Second Amendment. I heard him at one event at the University of Georgia say that he owned many guns. I never see him carry one, certainly. But I think that the reactions that I've seen online, sadly, some of them are very negative about we should not honor his life, we should not honor his legacy. And, you know, as a person who's targeted by Turning Point USA for advocating against gun violence, who wrote an op-ed against a law in our state that allowed concealed weapons on college campuses, it is just the deepest of irony that Charlie Kirk was shot on a college campus.
You hinted at your connection to this story, your personal connection to this story. So let's dive into that. The book that you've written looks into Kirk's conservative youth movement that he co-founded, Turning Point USA. But your connection begins before that. I know that they put you on their Professor watch list in 2016, one of 100 names.
Yeah.
And he blocked you on Twitter.
Yeah.
What happened? What's the story?
I wrote an op-ed when they were debating a bill here in our state about allowing concealed weapons on college campuses. That bill became a law, and they found that op-ed when they were looking for a list of things that they didn't like in 2016 to make this kind of first viral moment for Turning Point, this professor watch list. It was certainly not the first list of professors being targeted. And then, to be honest with you, I didn't think much of it when it happened, but I quickly learned who they were. And so I started writing about them, and then, to be honest with you, I kept posting my writings underneath his tweets, and I'm sure that's why they blocked me.
As one does.
Yes. So, I think that I've written different things about them over the years, and they're well aware of me. They've been adding things about me to my professor watch list listing. They claimed on that I had made my career out of Charlie Kirk, which is an exaggeration, but I will say that I've written a lot about him. And so I have some idea, I think, of what Turning Point is. And the book lays out this plan to take over the 7 cultural institutions that Charlie Kirk has targeted, these media, business, government, education, and on down the line. And to be honest with you, I don't know where Turning Point goes from here. Do they continue this plan? Do they see that as Charlie Kirk's legacy and they double down on it? You can't replace Charlie Kirk. He was the face of Turning Point, the energy, the founder, obviously. So I don't know where they go from here.
Professor, you are the epitome, I would venture to say, of the idea that 2 things can be true at the same time. So we started this conversation with you saying that you were choked up to hear of this, just this tragic killing. But also, Turning Point USA targeted you, put you on a watch list, and has continued to target you. How do you hold those 2 things?
I do admit it is difficult to know what Turning Point is, and to know that I'm one on that watch list. To continue to follow me as I follow them on Twitter, because of who Charlie Kirk was and his shooting on a college campus. I think that my emotions were directed to that impact. As a professor, as a person who talks to students, and many of them who knew Charlie Kirk or wanted to know him, I see that. I think that's why I had the reaction that I did.
More with Professor Matthew after the break. Well, Professor Matthew, as we said, details are still emerging and an investigation is underway. We don't know all that took place just yet. We knew perhaps even less on Wednesday, just after the shooting, when President Trump gave his Oval Office remarks. And yet, in those remarks, he blamed, quote, radical left political violence.
Those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now.
Kirk has created this force of young conservatives led by the president. But what do you think it means for the leadership of that movement?
I do think that the movement of mainly young white males who are conservative, some in college, some not, I do think that they will double down on their support of President Trump. His death will only spur more, not just political involvement or political advocacy, but will spur more anger. More distrust of the other side, more distrust of the media. I think also that, with President Trump's statement, he did mention the radical left, but he also mentioned vague organizations that may have to be blamed for this. And so am I to be included in that group because I write a critical book? Who knows? We have seen some terrible things from the White House in the last 6 months since he took office. And I think that him using vague language like that really sends a message that he wants to do something in response to this. He wants to act in a way that he's acted in Los Angeles or Chicago or Washington, D.C. I don't know what it would be. But I think that the MAGA movement, especially the young conservative males that he has attracted to himself, want that as well.
Well, earlier you said you don't necessarily fear yourself being targeted.
That could change, but not right now.
Of course, for any of us.
Yeah.
But this did happen on a college campus. The school year just started. You work at a college campus. What does it feel like right now?
My particular campus had a gun incident in April. And that event has really changed our campus, our school. I think the death of Charlie Kirk from a gun on college campus will be the start of more violence, perhaps, not necessarily on college campuses, but I think that, what Charlie Kirk tried to do was to get conservative students to speak out more. I find in my classes that students don't want to speak, and they don't want to get people riled up, or they don't want to seem negative. His death now seems to push people even further back into not having class discussions or not having what college should be about.
Well, you are a professor of religious rhetoric.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about rhetoric.
Sure.
Over the course of the past 24 hours, we've been seeing many people mourning Charlie Kirk's death. Former Fox News hosts broke down on air talking about it.
They're reporting that Charlie has died. That he's dead. At the age of 31.
An MSNBC analyst was reportedly fired for comments about this, calling Kirk a, quote, divisive figure who promoted, quote, hate speech. But let's look at some of the things that Kirk said. He said, quote, Black women do not have brain processing power to be taken seriously. You have to go steal a white person's slot.
Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist.
He said that Palestine, quote, doesn't exist. He has said, I can't stand empathy. I think empathy is made up. Professor Matthew, how do you square Kirk the martyr with Kirk the provocateur?
I think that the two things are related. He's being framed as a martyr for speaking out for, quote, free speech. I don't necessarily think he was interested in everybody having free speech. I think he's being framed as
You were blocked on Twitter for your speech, right?
Exactly. I think that his being framed as a martyr is for conservative causes. It's not necessarily for anything else. His provocative statements, his statements that he would call truth or that he would call truth seeking, are what he is being framed as a martyr for. And that should tell you all you need to know about the political divisions in our country. I'll say independents and middle people and progressives are not framing him as a martyr. It's the people who liked what he had to say that are framing him as a martyr. And all the things that you list, there are several more we could talk about, from calling the Supreme Court Justice DEI hire, or talking about black pilots. And I think that it was a provocative tour, but we need to be very specific about what he was being provocative about. He pushed a anti-immigration message. He pushed a pro-white message, much like Tucker Carlson. He pushed conspiracy theories. He said a lot that was wrong, both morally and factually. But at the same time, he was a really personable person and really engaged with people. So yes, as you said, two things can be true at the same time.
Also, as we said, Kirk was very pro-gun. I don't want this conversation to pass, Professor, without talking about the fact that this shooting came on the same day as another school shooting, this time at a high school campus in Colorado. It also came just a few months after a man targeted, shot, and killed a Minnesota Democratic state representative. And the list could go on. What keeps you up at night more? Is it the guns or is it the rise of political violence?
And I hate to choose between the two, honestly. The rise of political violence comes from the guns. It comes from a rise of rhetoric that we seem to not have a level of stopping. Charlie Kirk raised the level of rhetoric about spiritual warfare in this country, good versus evil. He was part of that. He also, though, was asked at an event in Idaho, when do we get to use the guns? It came from a far right person. And he said directly, yes, that would be a trap. That was what the Democrats want you to do. That would be a bad idea. So I credit him for that. But at the same time, he talked about, again, owning guns and using guns as a way to defend yourself from the government. he at times towed the line. I think that he knew the rise in political violence was happening. He talked about a cold civil war, but I also think that he didn't really know how to tone it down because he was successful at it.
How do you see the U.S. changing after not just the fact that it's his death, but it is the killing of a prominent, politically active person with this mass appeal, caught on video, circulated around the world on social media?
Yeah, I mean, we already have conspiracy theories spreading because we don't know who the shooter was. I think this is crossing a line, and that line being that we now are solving our political differences through violence. So I do worry about the future of our democracy, about the future of our ability to compromise, the future of our ability to have religious pluralism. Charlie Kirk talked about a Christian country, and I think that many people were against that. I, being a Christian, advocated against that. I think that this is a moment where we certainly can put it into a political football and put it into martyrdom, but I think it will have reverberations beyond the politics. I want to compare it to the shooting of Ronald Reagan in the 80s because of what happened with the Boedy bill. Obviously, I think that the opposite of that will happen. There will be more gun freedom, more gun usage, more use of the military. I think that President Trump wants to do that. So if we think about a parallel, what happened after Reagan was shot, just in the opposite way.
Professor Matthew Boedy, thank you so much for walking us through this.
Yeah.
Thank you for this conversation.
Yeah, nice to be here.
And that's The Take. Now, we want to hear from you. What stories do you want to see next on the show? Let us know in the comments below what you'd like us to cover. Your feedback helps shape future episodes, so don't be shy. I'll see you tomorrow.